She's tiny in stature, quietly spoken, almost invisible. For Mae Ja Kim, it's the perfect disguise to hide the dangerous truth. She is a criminal mastermind, part of Australia's most ruthless human trafficking syndicate. Police believe Mae Ja Kim made millions by exploiting hundreds of women lured from Asia to be enslaved in the sex industry here. A decade ago, she was sent to prison for 5 years. But as you'll see, that setback may be no more than a minor blip in the career of this major crook. For more than 12 months, we've been on the trail of one of Australia's most notorious human trafficking rings.
The lights at the front are still off. I don't expect them to come on until like 9, 10 a.m.
I've got a tip, and it could be the most important tip of this whole journey. It looks like a massage place, but it has all the telltale signs of a brothel. This is the latest site where Mae Ja Kim has set up her operation.
Mae Ja Kim knows better than anyone how to hide. Tracking her down to this inner Melbourne massage parlour hasn't been easy, but we finally have her in our sights.
She's known to be dangerous. She's an organised crime figure who has resorted to violence when need be. So to finally come face to face with her is what's been a long time coming. I want to ask you about the women coming from Korea. You know, you're exploiting the women coming from Korea?
Yeah, Korea, yeah.
Yeah, you take the women's passports, you exploit the sex workers coming from Korea.
What?
You know, the human trafficking, you were trafficking women.
No.
On the surface, Mae Ja Kim is an unlikely organised crime boss. But don't be fooled by her tiny stature. She has a long history of terrorising sex workers, lured from Asia to Australia, and making a fortune from their misery. Her crimes were so horrific, she was sent to jail. But as you're about to see, Mae Ja Kim is now at it again, with no respect for the law or the women unlucky enough to be caught up in her web.
Okay, this is a tape record of interview between Detective Leading Senior Constable James Cheshire and Mae Ja Kim, conducted at AFP Melbourne office.
By the time Australian Federal Police Officer James Cheshire sat down opposite Mae Ja Kim in an interview room in 2013, he was already convinced she was one of the most cunning criminals he'd ever come across.
She was very cocky. She thought that she could run the entire interaction. She was trying to set the scene. She was of the mindset that she was running the show.
With his colleague, Federal Police Commander Danielle Woodward, James had been investigating human trafficking, and it was Mae Ja Kim's name that came up over and over again.
We'd heard things about Mae Ja Kim, and we'd heard things about a syndicate that, was bringing in Korean women.
Did you get a sense early on that she was a dangerous person?
Look, I think I think she's probably really quite dangerous, very ruthless, incredibly ruthless in selling her own, soul off to get what she wanted.
What Mae Ja Kim wanted was money, lots of it. And it was in Melbourne's legal licensed brothels that she saw an opportunity to make hard cash fast. Behind these doors, Mae Ja Kim was ruthlessly running one of the country's largest human trafficking rings, rorting Australia's broken migration system and exploiting hundreds of vulnerable women lured from Asia to Australia to work in the sex trade.
Mae Ja Kim's model was a very, very good business model. She had supply and demand. It was basic economics. She had the lion's share of the South Korean girls that were out here.
How big? How many women? What was the size of it?
At the time, she had 10 managers, and each of those basically had 10 women. So she had 100 sex workers working for her at any given time, and that was just in that one snapshot.
Of this 100 women number, how many of them would have faced fear, coercion, debt bondage, intimidation?
I think pretty much all of them. She basically skimmed off the top of all of the money that the girls made and then the managers made. And so she was just raking in quite a lot of money every week and all in cash.
In stark contrast to the appalling conditions forced upon her workers inside the brothels, Mae Ja Kim was living large off the proceeds of her crimes. Her apartment was an Aladdin's cave of high-end luxury goods. Designer shoes, bags and perfumes lined the walls. Trophies from frequent spending sprees in Melbourne's most expensive shops.
So what do you estimate all these bags were worth?
So there was several $100,000 worth of bags and other designer clothing within her apartment.
Several $100,000.
Several $100,000.
Easily.
Really?
Yes,
Yeah.
those bags are limited edition upscale bags. So
Was it about keeping dirty money sort of safe by investing them in bags, or was it materialism? Was it?
Well and truly materialism.
And wonder how many times an exploited woman would have to have had sex in the conditions that were horrible to buy that bag or that bag or that bag. And just sort of...
Each bag is the exploitation of many dozens of women.
But Mae Ja Kim couldn't have cared less about the women under her control. Their misery meant her business was booming. What she didn't know was that the AFP had been covertly watching and listening to her as she ruthlessly ruled over her syndicate. And her greed was about to bring her undone.
We've intercepted a number of phone calls between yourself and other family members.
There's a phone call where Mae Ja is berating her sister about how bad things are going and that these are the worst figures that we've had in 10 years this particular week. And that week, Mae Ja made $82,500.
We are going to play to you one of those phone calls now.
And we started playing that call, and it was less than about 30 seconds in before she asked me to stop playing it and asked for the interview to be ended.
You want me to stop the call?
She knew without any doubt you had her.
Yes.
Mae Ja Kim was ultimately convicted and jailed in connection to her crimes. On the surface, taking out a major human trafficking boss was an undeniable coup for the Australian Federal Police. But, as you're about to see, it wasn't enough to stop her or her syndicate.
How soon after Mae Ja Kim left jail did the intel start trickling in that she might be back up to her old ways?
Very quickly.
Tope Street in South Melbourne is one of Australia's busiest and most profitable brothel strips. Australian Federal Police Officer James Cheshire thinks it's also the site of some of this country's most abhorrent crime.
It's crime hiding in plain sight. You don't actually see the impact. You know, if you drive along one of these streets and see a shop with a broken window, you see that there's crime going on there. But behind closed doors in a brothel, what's actually going on?
Answering that question is what led the detective and his partner, Federal Police Commander Danielle Woodward, to look into human trafficking in Victoria. Their focus was a sex slavery and debt bondage syndicate, headed up by notorious organised crime boss Mae Ja Kim, and these brothels were at the heart of her operation. When they convicted and jailed her, the detectives hoped her operation would collapse, but instead of shutting down, the syndicate rebuilt.
I think what we saw in the immediate aftermath was that it was quite significantly hit, and its operation was very wounded. But what happened was the gaps that were made by us being able to send people to prison were filled by these senior operators within the syndicate to continue or to rebuild what that syndicate model was.
Danielle, do you have any doubt in your mind the syndicate's still running as it always has?
I wish I could say that it isn't.
The reality is Mae Ja Kim's network only briefly slowed down after she was convicted, and it's since resurfaced is now thriving again.
How old is she?
G'day.
We arranged for undercover agents to see what was really going on in the legal brothels linked to the syndicate.
There you go.
Sources told us Mae Ja Kim had been secretly living and working in this one.
Big up. Yeah, still big up.
What was alarming was that fresh police investigations into the business had had seemingly no impact on the trade.
Our surveillance operatives walked into 39 within hours of the AFP doing a recent raid, and the brothel management was just cool as, did not seem to care the police had just been there. What do you think that says about their sense they can operate with impunity?
Well, it just shows their brazenness, I think, about their mindset of being able to continue on. They're not really that worried about what police do. They will just continue to operate.
Mae Ja Kim's human trafficking syndicate is just one of many crime groups that have been exploiting Australia's migration system. What's worse is that the Department of Home Affairs and Border Force knew of the problem, but didn't respond aggressively until 60 Minutes revealed it late last year. The Albanese government is now waiting on an inquiry into how to fix visa rorting. It means criminals like Mae Ja Kim continue to rort the system. Since her release from jail, she's been hard at work, building the syndicate's business back up. And this massage parlour in Hawthorne, Melbourne, is a front for one of her new operations.
The whole theory going to this story was there is human trafficking and it's not being investigated properly because the worst human traffickers, those that we know are human traffickers who've been to jail, like Mae Ja Kim, just get out of jail and keep doing it. And here it is. She's here right now doing this. Hey.
Hey.
Who are you? Good.
On the surface, Mae Ja Kim's new place of work looks above board. But under her leadership, the workers here are offering much more than a massage.
Massage is 100.
Massage and hand job.
Yeah.
And how much?
100. Okay.
It's scary when you think about it. If putting her in prison was meant to stop this sort of behaviour, it certainly didn't do that. And the aim this morning, if we can, is to wait for her to come out.
When I confronted her, Mae Ja Kim initially seemed confused.
Yeah.
So I'm the journalist
Yeah.
who does the story about the women from Korea. I want to ask you about the women coming from Korea. You know, you're exploiting the women coming from Korea?
Yeah, Korea, yeah.
Yeah, you take the women's passports, you exploit the sex workers coming from Korea.
What?
You know, the human trafficking women.
No.
Yeah, you're Mae Ja Kim?
Yeah, Mae Ja Kim.
Yeah.
Look.
It's okay.
Spotting the camera, this cunning criminal is suddenly shy, retreating back inside the massage parlour, where she tried to convince me she was no longer in the trafficking game.
She basically denied. She said it was other people doing it. She seemed to say there was other people doing it now, and she got really emotional. At the end of it, she was crying. She put on a very good performance, but I've been warned that's what she does. She's very manipulative, a master manipulator, and someone who cares for no one but herself.
And it's really hard to fathom that any individual could do this to someone over and over and over again. Human trafficking is such a terrible, terrible crime. And, you know, it's the people that are being trafficked are a commodity. It's degrading and it's just cruel and wrong.
Hello, I'm Tom Steinfort. Thanks for watching 60 Minutes Australia. Subscribe to our channel now for brand new stories and exclusive clips every week. And don't miss out on our Extra Minutes segments and full episodes of 60 Minutes on 9now.com.au, as well as the 9Now app.